So I went to the Goodwill the other day to get other stuff, and while I was there I found this amazing sweater, and it is made of 100% wool, which means that we can use it to make upcycled wool longies, and I'm going to try and make a soaker as well, maybe a skirty, I'm not sure. But check this sweater out. The first thing I'm going to do, it's a little old and it has a couple of holes here, so I'm going to throw it in my wash and get it felted, and that should not only take care of these holes, but it will help. That should not only take care of the holes, but it will help make it just a little bit more absorbent and protective as a garment, as a cloth diaper garment. All right?
To make these wool longies, you need a sweater made of 100% wool, some knit pants that fit your child well, scissors and thread, and your sewing machine. You don't actually need the elastic for this tutorial, but you could use it if you wanted.
Alright, I just put this through a cycle in the washing machine with a little bit of soap. I used some Allen's Naturally, it doesn't really matter what kind, and it agitated it through the hot water and cleaned it really well. And now I'm going to hang it to dry, and I can hang it like this if I want. If it looks like it's not going to distort the shape of the fabric at all, then that would work. If it looks like it will distort the shape of the fabric, then you want to lay it more than hang it. But if you can see, the fabric is now a little thicker, it's matted together, and over here where we had a hole, that hole is kind of fused together. It's not going to unravel on me. So it's not only sturdier fabric and thicker fabric, but it's also going to be more absorbent and better protection on your baby's bum.
If I hadn't shrunk and felted my sweater, I would have been able to use one of the sleeves for the pant leg, which would have eliminated the need for sewing any side seams. Since the sleeves are too small, I'm going to cut the pant legs from the body of the sweater instead. Now take your knit pants and fold them in half, and make sure you pull that crotch out as far as it will go. Lay them on top of your sweater, preferably with one of the sides against a fold, because that will eliminate the need for one of your seams, and line it up nicely along the fold and along the bottom, making sure that both sides of your sweater are also lined up really well. Next, you're going to cut, leaving about a ½ inch to an inch of space at the side where you're going to have to make a seam. And at the top, leave 1 inch to 2 inches of space. You should leave 1 inch to a ½ inch of space when cutting along the crotch too, which I failed to do, but fortunately my longie still turned out okay. Now you want to use the pant leg you just cut out as a pattern for your other pant leg, just to make sure that they're evenly matched. Carefully cut out your second pant leg. A very basic sewing machine will work just fine for this sewing project. Fold one of your pant legs in half so that the right sides of the fabric are facing each other and the edges of the pants line up. Choose a needle made for knit fabrics and set your machine to a zigzag stitch and lengthen the stitch length. Zigzag stitch along the seam, taking care that the two sides of the hem stay even at the bottom as you go. Back tack at the beginning and the end of the seam to keep the thread from unraveling. One leg is now complete. If you were unable to cut your pant legs in a single piece like I was, now you should sew the other length of this pant leg. Then, repeat the whole process for your second pant leg. If you want, you can trim and zigzag stitch the inside edges of your seams.
So now we have the pants inside out, and we want to sew that crotch seam. You always want your fabric right side spacing. Well, almost always want your fabric right side spacing when sewing seam. So we're going to turn both pants so that they are right side out. And you want to sew along the seam, and you're going to kind of have to move it as you go. You can pin right here at the crotch just to make sure you get it correct, and then as you sew, you're going to just keep moving it.
The only place you can really pin this seam is right at the crotch. So you want to find your inner seams and line them up, and go ahead and put a pin or two right there where those seams are going to touch right underneath the crotch. Now it's time to sew along this seam, the middle seam that will run from around the belly button to the back of the waist. You'll need to make sure the seam stays together as you go. Also, you'll need to keep fabric from the rest of the garment from accidentally getting sewn into the seam, which means you'll have to constantly check that everything is lining up correctly. When you finish, the pant legs will be cupped inside the partially inside out garment. Now it's time to revisit the knit pants you used for your pattern. Notice how the back of the waist rises higher to make room for the baby's bottom. We're going to exaggerate that a little bit to leave room for a fluffy cloth diapered bum. Turn your pants inside out again and lay them sideways with one leg on top of the other and the middle seam pulled to either side. Begin your cut about 1 inch to 1.5 inches below the top of one side of that middle seam, and cut diagonally upward until you reach the top of the waist at the side seams, which is the halfway point. To add an elastic at the waist, fold down the top of the pants so there's enough room to fit the elastic inside a fold with a seam allowance at the bottom. Pin the folded fabric down and sew with a long zigzag stitch, leaving an opening to insert your elastic. When the elastic is inserted, sew the ends of the elastic together and close up the opening. I considered using an elastic waistband in my longies, but changed my mind mid-project. Instead, I used more fabric from my sweater to make a thick waistband. First, in a video clip that we subsequently lost, I cut about 1 inch of fabric off the top of my half-finished garment to make room for the length this waistband would add. Then I cut a rectangular strip from my sweater that is a little shorter than the circumference of the waist of the pants. This rectangle should be 3 to 5 inches wide. When you fold it in half to attach it to the waist, it will be roughly 1 to 3 inches wide. Notice how my strip is shorter than the waist of the pants I'm making.
So we're going to take this rectangle right sides facing and use a zigzag stitch again. And I'm going to lengthen the stitch length because the fabric is so thick. Okay. Now I have a little bit of extra here, so I'm going to go ahead and trim that. Okay. Now I have this this nice little waistband flap. And then we want it to have a little stretch in it. So I'm going to take this and pin it to the inside. It's very thick there. So if you want to trim some of that stuff off, you can.
With the pants inside out, pin the waistband to the inside of your pants with the raw edges up and the fold down. Pin it at the center front, the center back, and both sides. If you find that any of the seams are too bulky as you're pinning, go ahead and trim away any extra fabric to make it easier to attach the waistband. Use a zigzag stitch to sew the waistband onto your pants. Again, I didn't find it necessary to add an elastic into my pants, but if you want to put one in the waistband, don't finish sewing this seam. Leave an opening, insert your elastic into the opening, sew the ends of the elastic together, then close up the seam. The circumference of the waistband is shorter than that of the pants, so you will have to stretch it as you stitch.
So, now our pants are done. This is what they look like from the inside, a little rough. If you want, you can take your scissors and trim some of this excess so it's not up against your baby's skin. You can trim this too. And this is what they look like when they're done. The back is a little bit higher than the front so that you have room for your big old cloth diaper. And because this is an upcycled wool sweater, you're going to want to wash it and lanolize it. Make sure you wash it inside out and put the lanolin in the water. And it's warm water, so the lanolin coats everything, and that'll help seal this so it's more water resistant. But here you go. Really easy wool longies made with 3 pieces of fabric out of an old sweater that I got for $4.99 at the Goodwill.